What if the person you're trying so hard to impress doesn't even exist? Think about it. How much of your life is spent shaping yourself into what you think others want? And what if, in doing so, you've been losing something far more important: yourself? This isn't just about people-pleasing. It's about the invisible strings we let others pull, often without even realizing it. So let's talk about authenticity, not as a buzzword, but as the only way to stand unshakable in a world that's constantly trying to shake you. And who better to guide us than Søren Kierkegaard, the philosopher who saw this struggle clearer than anyone over 150 years ago? Kierkegaard's core idea is simple but brutal. Most of us live by borrowed scripts. We follow the crowd, adopt its values, and measure our worth by its approval, all while pretending we're in control. He called this living in untruth. But here's the kicker. The moment you realize you've been performing, you're already closer to freedom. As he put it, the crowd is untruth. You probably recognize that stubborn feeling of being right even when you're not, or the way we cling to familiar ideas because they're safe, even if they don't fit us anymore. Remember when you realized a childhood belief wasn't quite true? That discomfort. That's Kierkegaard's starting point. The tension here is natural. On one hand, we're wired to seek approval. It's survival. But on the other, there's this quiet voice asking, is this really me? We've all had moments where we laugh a little too loud at a joke we don't find funny, or nod along to opinions we don't share. It's easier, sure, but Kierkegaard would say that's the problem. The easier path is usually the one that keeps us asleep. Many of us cling to the familiar because the alternative, thinking for ourselves, feels like stepping onto a tightrope without a net. Here's where it gets personal. Think about the last time you changed your mind about something big: a relationship, a career, a belief. Chances are it didn't happen because someone convinced you. It happened because something in you shifted. Kierkegaard called this subjective truth, the kind of understanding that doesn't come from outside approval, but from wrestling with yourself. It's messy, it's uncomfortable, but it's the only way to stop fooling yourself. Let's be honest, we all fool ourselves. We tell ourselves we're happy in jobs we hate because they're prestigious. We stay in relationships that dim our light because we're afraid of being alone. We post carefully curated versions of our lives online and then wonder why we feel empty. Kierkegaard wouldn't be surprised. He knew that the more we chase validation, the more we lose touch with what actually matters to us. So how do we break free? It starts with a question so simple, it's almost offensive. What do you want? Not your parents, not your friends, not society, you. The answer won't come easy. It might scare you. But that's the point. Kierkegaard believed that real growth begins at the edge of your comfort zone. In those moments when you're alone with your thoughts and there's no one to perform for. This isn't about rejecting others or becoming selfish. It's about realizing that you can't truly connect with anyone else until you're solid in yourself. Think of it like this. If you're always bending to fit others, how can anyone ever know the real you? And if no one knows the real you, how can you ever feel truly seen or loved? The irony is that the less you need approval, the more authentic your relationships become. When you're not hustling for validation, you attract people who like you for you, not for the version of you they've created in their heads. Kierkegaard would say, that's the only way to live without regret. Because at the end of your life, you won't remember the applause. You'll remember the moments you were fully yourself. This cracks open a truth we often overlook. The journey to authenticity isn't a straight line. It's a winding path with moments of clarity, confusion, and eventually, a deeper understanding of who we really are. We start by seeing things simply, believing that being ourselves should come naturally. Then, we hit the confusing middle, where everything feels tangled and uncertain. Finally, if we stay the course, we emerge with a new clarity, one that makes us unshakable, because it's rooted in something far deeper than the approval of others. In the beginning, it all seems straightforward. We think authenticity means just doing what feels right, speaking our minds, and not caring what others think. But here's the catch, that simplicity is often an illusion. We're still operating from a place of habit, reacting to the world around us without much reflection. Knee-jerk reactions dominate, whether it's snapping at a coworker, seeking validation through social media likes, or bending to fit someone else's expectations. Søren Kierkegaard, the Danish philosopher, called this the aesthetic stage, where we're driven by immediate feelings and external influences. Life feels easy here, but it's also shallow, like skimming the surface of a lake without ever diving in. Then comes the confusing middle. This is where things get messy. You might be someone who resists change at first, clinging to old habits because they feel safe. Most of us feel uneasy during transitions, and that's exactly what this phase is, a transition. Kierkegaard described this as the ethical stage, where we start questioning our automatic responses. Why do we say yes when we mean no? Why does criticism sting so much? Why do we crave approval even when we know it doesn't truly matter? This stage is tough because it demands honesty. It's like peeling back layers of yourself and not always liking what you find. But here's the thing. Kierkegaard understood. This discomfort isn't a sign you're failing. It's a sign you're growing. The middle phase is where the Barnum effect often sneaks in. You might read a generic statement like, "You sometimes doubt your decisions," and nod along because it feels eerily accurate. That's because most of us do feel this way during transitions. The key is to recognize these moments without letting them define you. You may catch yourself pausing before reacting lately, noticing old patterns but not automatically following them. That pause is progress. It's the space where thoughtful responses begin to replace knee-jerk reactions. Kierkegaard contrasted these two, the immediate reaction versus the chosen response, as the difference between living passively and living intentionally. Eventually, the confusion starts to clear. The new clarity isn't about having all the answers. It's about being okay with not having them. It's realizing that authenticity isn't about being perfect or even consistent. It's about aligning your actions with your values, even when it's hard. We start noticing small shifts, like speaking up when we'd normally stay quiet, or walking away from situations that don't serve us. These moments might seem minor, but they add up. They're the building blocks of an unshakable sense of self. This journey isn't linear, and that's the point. We circle back, stumble, and sometimes forget what we've learned. But each time we return to the path, we do so with a little more wisdom. The tough middle phase, as Kierkegaard knew, is where the real work happens. It's where we confront the gap between who we've been and who we want to be. And though it's uncomfortable, it's also where we find our strength. Through this discomfort, we begin to see the cracks in what we once thought was solid ground. The unease we feel isn't a sign of failure, but a quiet nudge towards something deeper, something truer. It's the friction of old ways rubbing against new awareness. And though it's uncomfortable, it's also where the real work happens. This isn't about fixing ourselves because we're broken. It's about uncovering what's been there all along, buried under layers of expectation and habit. At first, the discomfort might feel like a barrier, something to push through or ignore. But slowly, we start to notice it's actually a guide. The moments that unsettle us, the decisions that leave us second-guessing, the interactions that linger in our minds, are pointing us toward what needs our attention. We begin to see patterns. Maybe we keep choosing paths that look good but don't feel right. Or we realize how often we've silenced our own voice to keep the peace. These aren't flaws, they're clues. And here's where things get interesting. As we pay attention, we start to notice small shifts. You'll likely find daily decisions coming easier, not because life gets simpler, but because you're clearer on what matters to you. The noise of should and supposed to begins to fade, replaced by a quieter, steadier sense of direction. Many notice old frustrations don't bother them as much, not because they've mastered patience, but because they've stopped fighting battles that were never theirs to begin with. This isn't about becoming someone entirely new. It's about returning to who we've always been, just with fewer layers in the way. Think of it like peeling back wallpaper and discovering the original wood underneath, solid, beautiful, and full of character. The work isn't about adding, it's about uncovering. And with each layer that falls away, we breathe a little easier. There's a lightness that comes with this kind of clarity. It's not that life stops being messy or challenging, but the weight of pretending to have it all figured out, pretending to be someone we're not, starts to lift. We begin to trust ourselves more, not because we're never wrong, but because we're no longer afraid of being wrong. Mistakes stop feeling like failures and start feeling like part of the process. And then, almost without realizing it, we find ourselves making different choices. Not because we're forcing change, but because the old ways no longer fit. It's like finally taking off shoes that never quite fit. Shoes we didn't even realize were pinching until we slipped them off. That's the freedom Søren Kierkegaard described, the kind that comes not from running towards something new, but from releasing what was never ours to carry. Together, we discover that growth isn't about climbing a mountain to reach some distant peak. It's about walking forward, step by step, with our eyes open and our hearts willing to learn. Some days will feel easy, others will test us, but all of them are part of the same journey. And the beautiful thing is, we're not alone in it. Every person we meet is navigating their own version of this, some just starting, some further along, all of us figuring it out as we go. So when the discomfort comes, we don't have to fear it or rush past it. We can let it be what it is, a sign that we're growing, that we're alive, that we're paying attention. And in that attention, we find something surprising, not perfection, but something far better. We find ourselves exactly as we are, and that's more than enough.